guys, welcome back. Today we're doing remove element. So given an integer array called nums and an integer called val, they want us to remove all occurrences of val in nums in place, and the order of the elements may be changed. Then they want us to return the number of elements in nums which are not equal to val. So they tell us to consider the number of elements in nums which are not equal to val to be k, and to get accepted we need to do the following things. They want us to change the array nums such that the first k elements of nums contain the elements which are not equal to val. The remaining elements of nums are not important, as well as the size of nums. And then they want us to return k. So they're basically just saying here that they will validate that our solution actually works. And then if we take a look at the examples, so in example 1 we're given this input array and val equals 3, and we would return 2 with nums being this array. So basically, because there's 2 elements in the array, as we can see here, that are not equal to val, which is 3 in this case, then we would return 2. And then the first 2 elements store the 2 elements that are not val, and the last 2 can literally be anything. So they could be storing val, they could be storing what was originally there, they could store whatever number, it doesn't really matter. In example 2, similar situation, so we're given this input array, val equals 2, and we would output 5, with nums being this array, because as we can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements that are not equal to val that were in the original input array, and so the remaining elements can be whatever we want them to be. But it needs to start with these elements, and they tell us also that it doesn't matter what order the 5 elements here are in. So these can be in any order that we want. So I've already gone ahead and copied and pasted example 1 over here, and basically we can loop through the array, and as we loop through, because we need to do this in place, so as we loop through we can have 2 pointers to keep track of what we're doing. So we can have 1 pointer keep track of the index that we are going to rewrite our next element at, and we can have 1 pointer scope out sort of like where the next element to replace the current element would be, if that makes sense. So like for example 1, we have val is 3, so like we could start the 2 pointers both at the beginning and then check if that number is not equal to val. Then we'll replace it with the next number that is not, no, we'll replace like the number that we're currently at with the next number that's like not equal to val, if that makes sense. So like at the beginning we would replace it with the next one that's not equal to val, which would be 2 in this case. So then we would rewrite the 2 over here, and then we would increment it to the next one, and like so on until we get through the entire array. I hope that makes sense, but let's get started. So we'll just call our first pointer I, and we'll just set that equal to 0 for the 0th index. And then we'll have another, so we'll do the next one through a loop, so 4, and we'll just call it j, and we'll also start it at 0. J is less than nums.length, j++. So these are both starting off at 0. And then we want to check if the index at j is not equal to val. So if nums at j is not equal to val, then nums at I will set equal to nums at j. And then, so basically, so the first time we iterate through, it doesn't do anything because j is equal to val, so there's no point in rewriting this because it's literally, like, we only want to rewrite it if j is at one that is not val. So we'll just like loop through again, and then j will be 1, so I is 0, j is 1 right now, and then nums at j is now 2, so is that equal to val? No, it's not, right? So this is not equal to val, so we'll rewrite, let's actually copy and paste this so we don't lose the original array. But so we'll rewrite nums at I to be nums at j, right? So this will become 2, and then now we can increment I to be the next index because we already rewrote this one, so we'll move on to the next one that we want to rewrite, which will be the one right after, because we're basically rewriting the first, we can call it like x elements, where x is like the number of elements that are not val in the array, right? So we'll move on to the next index that we'll want to rewrite, which is the next one here, which is 1. And then, so we'll just do this for the entire thing pretty much. So then the next iteration, so j will be, now I is 1 actually, because we just incremented it. And then j will be 2 because it's incrementing as we loop through. So now nums at j is going to be 2, and 2 is not equal to val, so we will rewrite I with nums at j, but this is already 2, but so it doesn't actually affect anything. But then we'll just increment I, so I will be 2, and then j will be 3 now. And then nums at j is 3, which is equal to val, so we don't do anything here. And then we'll just increment j to 4, and then 4 is now out of the number of indices we have in this array, so we can exit this loop. And then we'll just want to return I, because basically, like, whatever index I is left off at is the number of elements that we rewrote, because we rewrote 2 elements here, which were the first 2 indices, and then I is now 2, which is 2 elements. So we'll just return I. Okay, so then basically our time complexity is going to be O of n, where n is the number of elements in nums. And that's because we're basically just looping through this entire array one time. So we're visiting like every element once relative to n. And then our space complexity is just constant because we don't have any additional data structures here. So that's it for this problem. Thank you guys for watching. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!